Over the course of the last decade, cell phones have become an irreplaceable part of our lives, putting a small personal computer in the hands of billions of people across the planet. To many, cell phones are not only an important tool for staying connected to the modern world, but a fashion statement as well. People clamor for the latest model, cases and accessories flood the market. Cell phones are, to a degree, an extension of our personal selves. And while this may seem like a new phenomenon, at the dawn of the 1970s, decorative phones were all the rage. This ranged from new, exciting colors to the curiously donut-shaped Sculptura model to 1967's Mickey Mouse phone. This phone, featuring a sculpted Mickey Mouse holding a striking yellow receiver, was created at the dawn of a new phenomenon: phone stores and a glut of competition and choice.
It's spring. Time to play it pretty smart.
There's so much in store for you.
It's a pretty smart place to leave notes.
Take a look at all the smart things a pretty phone can do.
I can decorate a phone to match my home.
We have lots of pretty smart ideas this spring.
Getting Bell quality is pretty smart.
Come on in and play it pretty smart with genuine Bell.
The Bell Phone Center is for you.
Previously, phones had been ordered directly from the phone company, but the landscape was changing and technology rapidly improving. This created the perfect storm for one orange lasagna-loving cat, a modern-day juggernaut of marketability, to take his place on household shelves.
Well, he's a fat cat, a cool cat, nobody's fool cat, but look out, 'cause here comes Garfield. He never keeps it, he's too hip, he likes his catnip. Well, look out, 'cause here comes Garfield. He's always got to be one up on ya, and he'll beat you to the punch every time. He'll give up anything for lasagna, unless he has to give up on his nap time.
If any decade was primed to love a pessimistic, gluttonous orange tabby cat named Garfield, it was the 1980s. Created in 1978, technically 1976, Garfield was the brainchild of Jim Davis, a young cartoonist who had been trying to break into the comic strip scene. After several failed attempts, Davis was able to get his 1976 comic John into syndication, but only once he changed the name of his comic to Garfield and put more focus on the protagonist's friendly feline. As Garfield's influence grew and grew, people began to approach Davis about the merchandising rights to his characters. Not wanting to relinquish creative control, like Charles M. Schulz, creator of Peanuts, had done decades prior, Davis founded Paws Inc. in order to manage the rights himself. And with the flip of a switch, Garfield was everywhere.
Watch out, here's talking Garfield.
Face it, you're a wimp.
Garfield plush, Garfield on cards, Garfield on posters, Garfield light switches, Garfield plushes with little suckers on their paws so you can stick them to car windows, little Garfields that'll hold on to things for you, Garfield chocolates, Garfield pizzas, Garfield cartoon specials, Garfield shows, Garfield movies, another Garfield show, Garfield video games, Garfield comics, but not Garfield comic strips like comic books, but with Garfield, Garfield t-shirts, and in 1978, Tyco Toys' Garfield phone. Tyco Toys, now a defunct division of Mattel, was a toy manufacturer who got their start making model trains and slot cars. They began aggressive expansion in the 1980s, acquiring a license for existing toy lines like the Magnadoodle and the Viewmaster. They were also well known for a product called Super Blocks, small plastic blocks that could be used alongside Legos. During the 80s, Tyco released quite a few novelty telephones, including one for their Super Blocks line, that came with a drawer for hiding figures, and extra blocks that could be arranged around the number pad. They also had a football phone, a phone shaped like Bloom County's Ompus, another famous comic strip character at the time, and their own version of the classic Mickey Mouse phone. Rolled into this collection was Tyco's Garfield phone, which came in two varieties, a hanging version that went on the wall, and the more famous of the two, a gently napping Garfield, laying down with his paws delicately tucked. Roughly the size of a real cat, this Garfield phone had a neat feature. When the receiver was pulled off his back, his eyes would open. There was also an 800 number customers could call to talk to Garfield himself. The phone sold well, but it and other novelty phones like it eventually faded away into obscurity as the 90s gave way to the 2000s and cell phones crept onto the scene. It's likely the Garfield phone would have been completely forgotten if not for one 35-year-old mystery keeping the sleepy feline alive. On the northwestern coast of France, in the province of Brittany, is the Eos coast. This region is well known for its abundant sea life, but also for the violence of its waters. The Eos coast has the highest concentration of lighthouses in the world, a testament to how difficult it is to traverse the area by boat. While it's not uncommon for debris from old wreckages to wash up on shore, beginning in the 1980s, something peculiar started happening. Bits of orange plastic and coiled phone cords began washing up on local beaches. As time passed, the phenomenon didn't stop, and groups of people had to be mobilized in order to keep the area clean. Soon, larger bits of plastic washed ashore, and it was finally clear as to what the debris was. Garfield phones. Dozens and dozens of Garfield phones. The problem baffled locals. It wouldn't be until 35 years after the first incident that the source of the phones would be found. A group of journalists, following a tip from a local farmer who had first seen the phones wash up on shore as a little boy, headed out to find the source. Eventually, they managed to locate a shipping container wedged deep inside a fissure, completely inaccessible. It was unclear if more Garfield phones were inside. Phones continued to wash up on the local beaches, some in surprisingly good shape despite being over 3 decades old. Plastics can take hundreds of years to break down in landfills, and, as a portion of the coast plagued by the phones is a designated marine park, major concerns have risen about the damage that the Garfield phones, as well as debris from other lost shipping containers, can do. According to the New York Times, 148 million shipping containers are sent by sea every year, and out of that number, 1,500 go missing. While that number isn't incredibly high percentage-wise, each of those lost containers falls into the ocean carrying various products from books to chemicals to plastic goods like Garfield phones. During one particularly bad storm, 500 shipping containers were lost in the Bay of Biscay, not far from the Eos coast. Meanwhile, local anti-litter group Arvilanceau has made the Garfield phones the face of their campaign, organizing cleanup projects to try to remove as much debris as they can. Behind the fun character of Garfield, there is plastic pollution that does not decompose in the ocean, and that we will continue to face for years. All environmental disasters aside, Garfield is seeing something of a resurgence in popular culture these days. Though nothing like the height of his popularity in the 80s, the younger generation holds fond feelings for this Monday-hating cat, but the years are still weighing on Garfield. Last year in 2019, Jim Davis finally relinquished control of Paws Inc. to Viacom, shuttered his offices, and sold many prototype items on eBay. Previously, Paws Inc. had kept one of every Garfield item at their offices, decorating it like a mini museum. Now all those items have been scattered to the wind in the hands of private collectors. In 2020, Jim Davis began auctioning off original Garfield strips through heritage auctions, clearing out the collection he'd held onto for so long. At age 74, Davis is taking a step back, though continuing to work on new strips in a limited capacity. As for the Garfield phone itself, they're fairly easy to purchase online, averaging around $50 to $60 compared to the original $100 retail price. This particular Garfield phone, which originally belonged to my mother, has a forever home on my tableside, safe from the raging waters of the sea that sank his brethren 30 years ago.